I heard Dana White say something the other day that I never thought I'd hear in my entire life, and I feel like so many people miss this. Listen to his response to this question at a post-fight presser.
We see you so, obviously in attendance at everything. Obviously, you're the face and the front man for so much on top of running the business. At what point do you say, I gotta find someone to pass a few of these things on to?
We're gonna find out this year. This year is gonna be we're gonna find out this year. We'll see.
Have you ever heard Dana White seriously consider a question like that at any other point? And that long pause, he was genuinely unsure about the future. It wasn't his usual brash, I'm not going anywhere ever. It wasn't they're gonna have to pry the UFC from my cold, dead hands. When asked in the context of the next year of his life at 55 years old, where he'll now be running and the face of a brand new boxing promotion that is going to try and take over and restructure the entire sport, where he'll be running and the face of Powerslap, his new baby that he wants so badly to prove the world wrong about. And in the context of him running and being the face of the UFC, the biggest juggernaut in combat sports, when asked whether he might need to give something up, we got a "we'll see." We'll see? Isn't that Dana's whole thing? If you're even considering retirement, then it's probably time, right, Dana?
Yeah, you know how I feel about that. Usually when you start, very rarely do I disagree with somebody when they feel like they want to retire.
Oh, but what about the Tucker Carlson interview? The headlines were everywhere last month. Dana White says, "I'll never retire." But you know how it goes with headlines. Context is everything. And listen to what he said in the context of their actual conversation.
I'm still out building new brands and doing shit that I don't need to be doing, but I do it because I love it. I will never retire, ever. I will keep dogging this out until the day I drop dead.
Dana White did not say, "I will never retire from the UFC." Dana White said he will never retire from working. And the larger conversation was about stopping work in general and all the new ventures that White is embarking on. Oh yeah, I forgot about the jiu-jitsu thing.
I thought I was busy. I didn't realize what busy really was until the last couple of weeks. We're gonna invest like $10 to $12 million into jiu-jitsu over the next year. We're going to go big on that. We're obviously going big on boxing. We're going to continue to do what we do with the UFC and then watch what happens to Powerslap in the next 2 years.
Okay, now he's just doing business side quests too with randos who come into his office daily. Dana White is spread thinner than butter scraped over too much bread. But this goes so much deeper than you realize. But if you've been paying attention to what White says, what the UFC's power structures are really like, and the tasks he has ahead of him, I don't think it's at all unreasonable to ask this question. In fact, I think it's an inevitable reality, and when I'm finished today, I bet you will feel the same way. Is Dana White about to leave MMA behind? Let me start answering that question by asking you one. Does Dana White seem as passionate about MMA to you anymore? He's certainly a passionate guy, but lately that expression is not specifically about the sport. It's about free speech, or the media sucking, or he's waxing on about his personal and business philosophies on 90 different podcasts. He's a passionate guy still, but can you think of a single quote from White in the last, 5 years that was about something actually happening in the sport that is as memorable or iconic as so many of the fiery quotes from his past? When it comes to MMA, White has mellowed out considerably in recent years. And why wouldn't he? There are no more battles to fight. He beat everybody. Every promotion that ever had a chance to overtake him is dead. The UFC will forever be the #1 brand in mixed martial arts. He's proven that they can go mainstream. He's gotten the big deals, the network TV, the ESPN. The MMA business has been conquered entirely. So of course it's not going to be like the old days, because back then he was fighting an uphill battle in nearly every regard.
By 2004, we're upside down $40 million. Now, and we're only doing 5 events a year.
This is peacetime Dana White, and he is months away from securing the next decade of the promotion's revenue. The UFC's rights deal with ESPN is up this year, and White told Bloomberg that the next deal they ink will be a 10-year partnership. On top of that, you have executives like Mark Shapiro, the COO for the UFC's parent company, who has hinted that the next deal might also get the promotion out of the pay-per-view business. Whether it's Netflix, Amazon, or whoever else, not only is the UFC about to ensure a massive chunk of their revenue for a decade, they might very well restructure their business so that this rights deal locks in their revenue guaranteed even more than it already is. The UFC is practically on autopilot now, and with their new deal, any worry about a business downturn wouldn't be until White is 65. Not to mention, if you watched my video about who it is that will replace Dana White when he does step away from the UFC, or watched the Roku behind the scenes documentary about the UFC's office, you are very well aware that Hunter Campbell is probably doing the majority of what you think Dana White does day to day right now for the promotion. There was definitely a time where the boats wouldn't have stayed afloat if White suddenly walked away, but those days are over, and Dana has said it himself.
The UFC is a sport and a franchise and a business that will go on long after I'm gone. It'll just be different. There will be somebody else here who will have other philosophies and ideas, and it will just be different. But the UFC will go on forever.
There is nothing left for White to build in MMA. Be honest with me. Do you as a fan feel like the sport is going to get much bigger than it already is right now? Even if it did, what is the difference between gigantic and massive? And the men he built it all with aren't even around anymore. Lorenzo and Frank Fertitta moved on nearly a decade ago, and that moment of change, of his best friends deciding, you know what? We did what we wanted to do with this sport and we're moving on with our lives, gave Dana a full-on existential crisis.
When this deal closed, it bugged me out a little bit. My partners, I've been with them for 20 years. So that's all gonna change. I have new partners now. Yeah, it's kind of Howard Hughes myself up into a hotel room for a couple days.
Yeah, really?
Didn't sleep or eat. It kind of freaked me out a little bit.
Now, Dana got past that moment, and maybe in part because he felt there were still things to do, lands to conquer. And crucially, he and new owner Ari Emanuel were and still are very good friends. But things have changed again, and we're even further removed from Frank and Lorenzo settling disputes via jiu-jitsu. Now the UFC is part of a publicly traded conglomerate, TKO. They are under the same umbrella as the WWE. This operation is absolutely massive. In the initial setup of the business, technically Dana White was working under Vince McMahon, even though he wanted nothing to do with the UFC and eventually had to leave. But in terms of corporate structure, McMahon was higher up than White. As UFC CEO, White answers to the chief officers of TKO Group Holdings, which are Ari and Mark Shapiro. But there's also a board of directors to consider, and most importantly, the shareholders, who must be enriched with every single decision TKO makes. And when publicly traded companies are doing well, things are great. And so far, best friend Ari has done the smart thing and let Dana run the UFC as he always has. But if things ever get bad, people that aren't Dana White are going to have say in what the UFC does with their business, and based on how White felt about COVID-era troubles, I don't think that would go over very well.
After we had sold, now we're a big, huge company. We're under the umbrella of in a portfolio of many other companies, and you know how that works. As you start leading into bad times, you start looking at cutting people, laying people off, and it's always about the bottom line when you're in a business like that. That's not the way that I'm wired. So it's not about the bottom line for me, it's about people. I will always pick people over money.
So the UFC is unbeatable, Dana White is no longer vital for its future success, his best friends he built the thing with left over a decade ago, and now he's beholden to shareholders in a massive publicly traded company. When you look at it like that, the idea of creating Powerslap, which felt incredibly random at the time, makes a whole lot more sense. Now, White came up with the idea in early 2022, which was before TKO talks began. But having something of his own that is not controlled by his corporate overlords, I don't think is the main draw for White. And I don't think it was the money either. He's got more than he could ever spend. He actually laid it out pretty specifically recently, and it's something that's been missing from his work with the UFC for a very long time now, far longer than the TKO merger.
It's actually been fun for me. If you built this incredible business, then you had the chance to go back and do it all again, and it's almost identically the same. It's what I'm getting right now with Powerslap, so it's been really fun for me.
Yeah, exactly. Look at that motherfucker's eyes lighting up. And whether it's nostalgia for the old days when White and his best billionaire childhood friend Lorenzo were sinking millions into a dead brand and fighting the government, the pay-per-view providers, the media, and everybody else to make that thing that everybody thought was going to fail into a mainstream attraction that Disney was airing on their networks, or it's that the UFC is just simply no longer a challenge as we have pointed out, it seems like White is trying to recreate his greatest achievements with Powerslap. And I mean, the parallels are kinda eerie, right? The sentiment towards slap fighting, which, for the record, I completely agree with, is so incredibly similar to the situation MMA was in when White took over the UFC. Everybody hates it, thinks it's stupid, barbaric, and nobody is willing to partner with him. It will never work. Dana is reliving his 30s just like every other guy in his mid-50s, except White's 30s were spent building a combat sports empire and and now he's getting a chance to do it again. But Powerslap isn't going to pull Dana White from MMA. Not alone, at least. It is a factor, a big one, but it is not the largest because we need to talk about the absolute woolly mammoth in the room, TKO Boxing. Or at least that's what Dana's hoping they call it. As of this writing, they haven't picked a name. I hope it ends up being Riyadh's season. So guys, watch any video we have done about the history of Dana White. The guy was obsessed with boxing. Boxing is Dana's true love, his first love. If rebuilding the UFC in Powerslap is nostalgia for his 30s, finally getting to run a boxing promotion is nostalgia for his childhood. Dana was boxing at 17 years old. He wanted to be a contender. He was building a boxing gym in Boston when he left for Las Vegas. He was famously carrying the Mayweather's bags around, desperately trying to get an in the boxing world. Dana White wanted to be the Dana White of boxing, but as fate would have it, the UFC would interrupt that path. But he never fully lost that ambition. You think it was a casual choice to wear a Zuffa boxing shirt at that massive Maymac press conference? Forget Fedor, boxing has been Dana's white whale since before he even ran back into Lorenzo at that party. And now he finally has the backers, who most importantly are outside of the United States where the Ali Act is in effect, that can make his dream come true. And his dream is to turn boxing into the UFC. He has already said they want the same structure for their events. He wants TV rights deals. His entire playbook is being run again. I would not be shocked if he made boxing tough. He is reliving his glory days with 2 different promotions, and one of them is in the sport he's loved since he was a child. How in the world could you ever think that the UFC would be this man's main priority right now? And how can it be with so much that needs to be done? Listen to him talk about his role in this new boxing promotion.
I'm going to run and manage the business for them. Shake Turkey and his crew found out quick that it's a lot tougher than it seems. Came to me and wanted to work out a deal where we run the business.
Yeah, so if you were under the impression that White is just some figurehead, he is not. He is in total control of what will be the most disruptive promotion in boxing history. Dana White is going to have to put every ounce of effort he can into building this thing up. This isn't a fun pet project like Powerslap. That was already something that was taking quite a bit of his attention. Now he is getting paid by the Saudis, who are putting a lot of money into this, with the expectation that White will deliver the sport of boxing, Dana's own obsession, to them on a silver platter. And as he pointed out in that clip, they hadn't yet done so even with an infinite money glitch. So there is a ton of work to be done. Alright, so let's break all of this down in the context of the question we asked at the very start of the video. Is Dana White about to leave MMA behind? Well, even if you are still, after all we've spoken about, firmly in the camp of Dana White holding tight in mixed martial arts, it doesn't change the fact that he is now going to have to split his time between 3 promotions, one of which White is desperate to prove can work because nothing makes him happier than getting to say, "I told you I could do it." The other is the biggest, most expensive coup in the history of boxing that will be the most competitive environment that Dana White has ever been in his entire combat sports career. And the third is nearly on autopilot, no longer truly needs him to function, and is about to be set for the next decade. So even if you are of the mind that he won't leave, what do you think is going to happen when those 2 other ventures really squeeze his time? What is going to take the back burner? The safest venture he's involved in. The one that doesn't need that much effort from him at all. Even if White is not leaving MMA for good yet, which I do believe will happen sooner than later, I have no doubt in my mind that his role is going to become more and more diminished in the coming year and beyond that. Because all of what White has said in the last few months is indicating the same thing to me. That Dana gets out of bed because he loves building empires. That is what gets his juices flowing. The challenge of doing it again. And when that is the biggest motivating factor in your life, what do you do when the empire you built no longer needs building? You build another one. Just like the king that edited this video, Max Randall. Please follow his socials, check out his awesome YouTube channel, and send him Pokemon cards. A massive thank you to our channel members. Many, many, many thanks. Fight fans, hit the join button to become one too. We got exclusive content for you. Like and subscribe if your billionaire best friend retired too. Leave a comment about where you see Dana in the future. And thanks so much for watching. You guys stay safe out there.